The 154th Speaker of the House of Commons, the Right Honourable Bernard Wetherill MP, goes in procession from his state apartments to take his seat in the House of Commons. The Speaker is third in the order of precedence of all the commoners in the kingdom. Only the Prime Minister and the Lord President of the Council come before him. He alone decides who shall or shall not speak in a debate. He alone is responsible for order in the House. The chamber of the House of Commons on state opening day, crowded with MPs, often fractious, excited and rowdy. George Thomas presided over them as Speaker. He held the job for 7 years till his retirement at the end of the last Parliament.
I never forget the day when I climbed up the steps to go into this chair, and when I looked at my friends on both sides of the House, I thought to myself, I hadn't realised how long their teeth are. It's terrifying when you realise you're on your own.
The Speaker is elected by his fellow MPs. He's a member of Parliament, but is above politics. In a division, he has the casting vote.
I think that this House has an instinct, for deciding that when it chooses its Speaker, and having chosen him, they can't easily get rid of him. When they choose the Speaker, he's going to be the only person absolutely outside the battle in this chamber. He must be impartial. He must love the House. He must, in his person, represent the values that this House stands for and guard our democratic traditions, both in the chamber and outside. And you may well imagine what a privilege I feel it, that the lot fell on me.
In front of the Speaker's chair is the table with its dispatch boxes, lecterns for the Prime Minister and ministers to rest their speeches on. It is the job of the Speaker to regulate the debates, to call on particular MPs to speak, and to put the question at the end of the debate on which members have to vote. So, inside the House of Commons, and in particular in the chamber, the Speaker's power is formidable. The Speaker has had his own house within the palace since the 18th century, but his office goes back to the very early days of the Commons, to 1377, when Sir Thomas Hungerford was appointed. It was his duty to speak on behalf of the representatives of the ordinary people to the King, a dangerous job. 9 speakers have died for offending the monarch. When the Victorians rebuilt the palace after the Great Fire of 1834, they gave the Speaker the grandest mansion within it, at the base of the clock tower. His is the only one left of the 18 palatial residences still used as originally intended. On the first floor is a suite of great and grand rooms for his official and public duties. Above that, he has his private residence. When the Master of the Rolls, Lord Denning, retired, the Speaker marked the occasion with a banquet. It is one of the more pleasant duties of his office to entertain the country's great and famous.
We don't go too fast.
Yeah.
Good evening.
We're the first, are we?
Shine for both, sugar.
That's a friend of yours, then. This is Mary.
Yes, I know. We always enjoy
Hello, my
seeing
dears. How are
looking
you?
next to you.
Right, I'll do exactly what you say. I'm a very
Obedient.
obedient old gentleman.
Well, if you'll be kind enough to see Lord Denning. Yes, thank you. You look after?
Yes, I will.
Oh, such a nice. A bit afterwards, be wise. Now, this is my main reception room. I'm very fond of this room because we get receptions here just before the dinners. This is where everyone gets to know each other, and that's why it has a very special significance. But whilst we are here, look at Arthur Onslow, the Arthur. Speaker Onslow was 34 years of age coming in. He was 68 years of age when he retired. 34 years in the chair. He was there long enough to make the office completely impartial. He took powers to himself. It is he, more than any man in our history, who carved out the modern speakership. He was the third in his family to become a speaker. Tremendous man. And we are, and ever will be, in his debt. Now, equally, he is a reminder of the old custom when the Speaker, for every new Parliament, received a service of silver worth a fortune. He had 5 sets of silver because he was there for 5 Parliaments. Manners Sutton, another Speaker, he had 7 sets because he was there for 7 Parliaments. But in 1834, that custom was stopped. Pity, isn't it? Which reminds me of Speaker John Trevor. When he was appointed Speaker, when a member was called to speak, the Speaker would point at him. Not a word spoken, he'd just point at the person concerned. Unfortunately, Sir John Trevor had a double squint, and the wrong member kept getting up. The House decided by motion that the Speaker must call us by name. And it's thanks to Sir John Trevor that the Speaker has to know 635 members.
Bless, O Lord, our table, deepen our gratitude, enlarge our sympathies, and order our affections in generous and unselfish lives. Amen.
Amen.
This is my dining room, and I'm particularly proud of this because this is the place where you have atmosphere, the same as you do in the chamber. A handful of air is a handful of British history here. But imagine walking into this room and looking at these and saying to myself, they have all sat in that chair as I do. They've all faced a noisy Commons. And at the end of the day, they're not remembered for particular incidences, but it's an overall picture of what they were like. Now, Speaker Brand, remarkable man, great strength of character. He, Speaker Peel and Speaker Gully, they were in the chair at the time when the Irish nationalists were fighting for independence for Ireland. He sat in the chair once for 36 hours, and at last he said, I've had enough. I don't blame him. I'm going to put the question. He had no authority to do it, but he did it. And, of course, the majority wanted the question put, although the Irish protested. The next day, Mr. Gladstone, who was Prime Minister, introduced the closure, giving the Speaker the right to decide that the debate should finish. Now, the first one to exercise that was Speaker Peel, the son of Sir Robert Peel. Tall, arrogant man. Talk about a fly would drop dead within a mile of him. He wouldn't tolerate the 3 wise men very gladly. It's said of him, he only needed to rustle his robes and members would be quiet. Well, I've tried it. It doesn't work. He must have had different material. I think this is probably the nicest dining room in London. Certainly one of them. I, therefore, feel that it ought to be opened up more to the public. And I have opened it up in my time as Speaker.
We parked at this top bit up. Came out, I haven't gone to the ladies' loo. Actually, I said to you, you're not going to have to look now, but I think we better for a change now.
Now, this is my study. This is where the decisions are taken. This is where I have to work very hard without people knowing. And I am fortified by pictures like Speaker Lenthal there. He was in the chair when King Charles I stormed in to arrest 5 members. Now the 5 members had disappeared and they'd gone down the river. Everyone knew where they'd gone, and the king knew every member of parliament. So he looked around, he saw the birds had flown, and he said, "Where are they?" No member would say anything. And then the king commanded Speaker Lenthal to tell him. And to his immortal credit, Speaker Lenthal stood up to the monarch and said, "I have eyes to see and tongue to tell, only as this house doth command me." Wonderful man, Speaker Lenthal. He really was asserting the independence of Parliament.
The man appointed by the Crown to attend upon the Speaker is the Sergeant-at-Arms, Victor Lefanu. Wearing court dress and a sword, he sits at the far end of the chamber. The post is traditionally held by former officers from the Army and Navy.
One of us is almost there, and we do an hour and a half in the chair and then an hour and a half off, and we start our chair work at when I go with Mr. Speaker's procession in the afternoon with the mace into the chamber, and one of us is there for as long as the House sits, which, as you know, could on a late night be 8 o'clock the following morning. And some people say, what an extraordinary thing to have to sit till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't particularly find it extraordinary. I've always enjoyed the night work here, and I've heard some very good speeches, actually, at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, there has been a Sergeant-at-Arms here in the House of Commons for a very long time now, and it was King Henry V who appointed the first sergeant in 1415 at the House of Commons' request. Originally, they were the permanent element in garrisons up and down the country, and then later they became a part of the royal bodyguard towards the end of the 13th century. At that time, they were not, I think, universally popular. In fact, perhaps they aren't universally popular today, but there were complaints of the wide-ranging activities of the King's Sergeant-at-Arms, who collected loans and taxes, impressed men and ships, and in all sorts of ways interfered with the course of local administration and justice. The sergeant was rarely the Commons' messenger with the power of arrest. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are we off seats today?
We got 1 under the gallery, sir, 7 on the west and 12 on the east, and no queue, sir.
No queue, but there might be one later.
Probably, sir, yes, I'll check on it when I go
After
back.
prayers there may be one.
Yes, sir.
So then we have to put some admission orders at 3:30, otherwise we'll overflow.
Very good, sir.
Good. See you in the Speaker's office in a moment.
Thank you very much, sir.
Right.
The Sergeant-at-Arms Department is responsible, among other things, for the sensitive business of allocating office space to MPs. They organise the office cleaning and the distribution of MPs' newspapers. In the Commons chamber, the Sergeant-at-Arms and his team of doorkeepers are responsible for admission to the public galleries, and if need be, expulsion. On the floor of the House, it can be his duty to remove recalcitrant MPs. The most famous arrest of the past century was of Charles Bradlaugh, the atheist MP who in 1880 refused to take the parliamentary oath on the Bible. In the uproar that followed, Bradlaugh was arrested by the sergeant's men and marched off to the prison room in the clock tower beneath Big Ben, where he remained very comfortably for the night. Security is always a major problem. The paradox is that while it must be strictly vigilant, Westminster must always be open to those with a right to be there.
Well, if we take, for example, a Member of Parliament arriving here for work, he would drive in through carriage gates into his car where there would be a police officer from a division of the Metropolitan Police who is under the control of the head of security here. And I work with Chief Superintendent Evans on matters of security on behalf of the Speaker.
On the Speaker's behalf, the Sergeant-at-Arms has the power to arrest people and bring them to Westminster. When Arthur Scargill refused to appear before a Commons committee, the Sergeant-at-Arms sent his warrant officer, Mary Frampton, the first woman to hold the office, to serve a warrant on the miners' leader.
I understand you've got a job to do this evening with some family dedication.
Yes, that's my letter of authority.
I see.
And that is the letter I have to do.
I see. Does this mean the tower, or does it mean some underground dungeon?
Mr. Scargill eventually attended the committee without the authority of the sergeant's warrant.
Well, as I told you in the office, we're going up now to the members' lobby, and the Sergeant-at-Arms staff have a very key...
The Sergeant-at-Arms has 3 deputies. Peter Jennings is his first deputy. The latest recruit to the sergeant's office is Philip Wright, who has been in the job for only a few days.
Now, these doorkeepers, as you may or may not know from your days in the army, are all recruited from the armed services. They have to have a minimum of 22 years' service, to have served a pension, and to reach the substantive rank of a warrant officer or equivalent. And we've got a good spread. I'd like to introduce to you first Mr. Outram.
Good morning, sir. The messages arrive at the board in duplicate via the delivery system, which is sited around the back. We then proceed to put one copy on the board so that members passing can, in fact, collect their messages when they see their lights. The half that is displayed here are then taken into the chamber, and members, if they're in the chamber, they then receive the messages in the chamber.
Well, you've met Mr. Bruntle in the office. He, as you know, is the principal doorkeeper. He's in charge of all the doorkeepers and responsible for this key post in its relationship to the chamber.
I'm responsible, and my second principal doorkeeper, for anybody going into this chamber or we're not sure of, is that a member or an officer of the House, we stop them straight away.
Historically, the members of the House of Commons have not wanted to have uniformed policemen in sight of the chamber, and this is how the doorkeepers came into being. So I think it's really true to say that the doorkeepers are the chamber's own and members' own police force, although they are uniform, but they are not uniformed policemen, and they are here for security duties. Yes. Whilst we're here, we might get the principal doorkeeper to explain to us about the snuff. It's a custom that the House has provided snuff for members and officers of the House going back a very long number of years. And Mr. Bruntle will show you the snuff box. It is, I think, worth noting that the wood for the snuff box is from the original chamber, which was destroyed in the bomb in 1941, as you know.
Yes.
But it is rather nice.
And full of snuff. Yes. Yes. Originally, I gathered that the snuff originated from the bequest of money left by a member of Parliament many years ago, of course, and I gathered that when that bequest sort of run out, from then on it's been supplied by the Sergeant-at-Arms Fund.
I see.
But it's always available here when the House is sitting for members of Parliament to have a pinch of snuff before they enter the chamber if they wish to do so.
Hello, Mr. Runkman.
Hello, sir.
What have we got today?
Third in command is the Assistant Sergeant-at-Arms, Michael Cummins.
Means to say the house could go at 11:30 tonight.
Yes, yes.
Probably maybe a division of make 1 or 2, sir.
Yeah. Of course, they could be taken together, though.
Could be taken together, yes, yes.
Yes. And then before that, of course, we've got Prime Minister's question time, 3:15. Business statement thereafter.
Yes, yes.
Now, there's a mass lobby on today, as you know.
Yes, sir.
So you may like to warn off the Strangers Gallery. They may get a few extra people in the gallery after the lobby is finished in Grand Committee Room. I would think about 4 or 4:30, that's what time it'll finish.
Yes.
The only other thing I've got for you, I think, is that Major Jennings will be doing the procession tomorrow.
Yes.
Could you tell the bar doorkeeper tomorrow
keeper.
morning?
Yes, sir.
Good, fine, right. Okay, many
Yes, sir.
thanks.
Thank you, sir.
See you later.
Yes, sir.
This is a job that needs rather special clothes. There's a Savile Row tailor who for generations has made the official court dress for the Sergeants-at-Arms.
I know when we started, Mr. Johns, you said prominent calves would be a problem.
Yes, well, I've allowed you enough room, I hope, sir, to get over them.
Well, those feel all right. No problems from your side.
Fine, I'll slip on the waistcoat, sir.
Yeah.
And that fastens
Well,
on.
that goes
just
on underneath the collar, fitted and hangs down. Yes, that's fine, yes. Although you won't be wearing it at this stage in your career at the moment. So I think that's fine. That seems to fit very well there.
And these cuffs, you say you just want me to tack them on?
Yes, the cuffs will just tack on
What?
underneath the the actual material of the cuff.
Right.
Like that. Yes, I think they're about the right size. I think they'll.
Well, I can do that when you
be all
require.
right.
When you
Yes, when he
require
requires
something,
this.
yes.
Can I just say a couple of things? And that is, when you're in the chamber, you'll often be wearing this for long periods. Remember, maybe 10 or 12 hours a day.
Yes.
So it's very much a working form of dress. And sitting in the chair in the chamber at 4:30 in the morning, sometimes you find that it becomes very tight under here, under the arms, unless it's reasonably well fitting. And again, you want to make sure it's comfortable around the calf, around here.
Right.
Because again, sitting in our chair, it's often not the most comfortable place to sit for hours on end.
Shall I try this chair and just see
It might be an idea, actually, yes, if you can sit down there and just manage your sword at the same time.
It's all fixed together.
Well, I think that's fine, Mr. Johns, unless you have any expert comments you want to make.
No, I've made all
from
my
point of view, I think
adjustments,
it's coming on very well.
Just white threads removed. And
We look forward to seeing you in it very soon.
Well, the Sergeant-at-Arms must have worn that uniform for a very long time now. I suppose that there are 1 or 2 people who might have a rather fashionable contempt for ceremony and the dress that goes with it. Ceremonial plays a very large part in our national life, and I think that those who are privileged to take part in it should be appropriately dressed for it. After all, the Speaker and the clerks are also appropriately dressed for duty in the chamber.
In the Speaker's procession, the Sergeant-at-Arms carries the mace. It's a symbol of the monarch's authority in the Commons' chamber, where it lies on the table. Without it, the Commons cannot pass any laws. The ceremonial of the mace must be precise.
In the House adjourns, the Speaker or Deputy Speaker will leave the chair, and at the same time, you leave the chair here, advance to the bow, come forward as usual to the table, 1 more bow, mace on the shoulder, out along the right-hand side of the table of the House, and to the back, where we will find, or we will imagine today as we're practicing it, the Speaker's train bearer, and you hand the mace to him.
Right, sir.
And then you move over to the left, and as the Speaker passes through, he will give the order for the day, whether it is usual time today or usual time tomorrow.
Yes.
Or, of course, if it's on a Thursday, it'll be the usual time at 9:30, which you repeat to the principal doorkeeper who will be standing opposite you.
Yes.
So I will now run through that drill myself with it, if you watch to see how it goes. Now, I've come from the table down the floor of the House. I halt here, I bow, mace up, and away we go along the right-hand side, like this. Not too fast, not too slow. The Speaker will be standing on my left here. And when you come here, you'll find the Speaker's chamber, and you hand the mace over to him, and he will stand over here with the mace, and you, having dispensed of it to him, you, having handed the mace over, will stand here, the principal doorkeeper will be there, the Speaker will come through, and he will say, the usual time today, and you repeat, the usual time today, sir. And then to the principal doorkeeper, you say, the usual time today. And he will say to you, the usual time today. So when you've done that, everyone knows exactly what time the House will be meeting.
Yes.
And then you simply walk forward and follow the principal doorkeeper through the lobby, and away you go.
Right, sure.
Okay?
Yes, fine.
The Commons Chamber is a relatively small room in the heart of the Palace of Westminster. In 1941 it was destroyed by German bombs, and the Commons moved temporarily into the House of Lords until their new chamber was rebuilt. This had better facilities for the public to listen to the debates, but only the same number of seats for MPs, 427, although there are 650 members.
Remember that the Commons was built just after the war, and the Commonwealth rallied round. They all wanted to play a part. Australia gave us that lovely speaker's chair. Canada gave us this table, which has a very special significance, about which I'd like to speak. New Zealand gave us the treasury boxes. India gave us these wonderful doors into the chamber. And every part of the Commonwealth contributed something. One of the smaller countries gave us the paper holders. But the table has a special significance in parliamentary terms. When a minister will say to the House, I have laid on the table a certain document, it then becomes part of the official life of the House. It's noted in the journal. It is something that the House can continue to talk about. The public who come to our gallery are sometimes puzzled because they see members sitting with their feet up on this table, and they get horrified. They say, oh, what ill manners. It's not really, because this isn't a table from which people eat. And again, historically, this has been done. There are pictures of Mr. Gladstone and Mr. Disraeli with their feet on this table from either side. Palmerston and Peel and Pitt will have had their feet on the Commons table. There was a table here before this one. It is a sign that you've arrived when you can put your feet on the table in the Commons. Now, that red line and that red line on the other side has the distance between them of two members standing with a sword in their hand, which would touch tip to tip if they held them out. And that's thought near enough for one side to get to the other side without trouble coming. And so to this very day, if a member here puts his foot over the line, like that, honourable members on the other side will shout, order, order. At first he doesn't realise what he's done wrong. Then his friends will say, pull your foot in. And it's one of the old customs. And we keep it going. If the Speaker makes a mistake, and he's a fortunate man if he never makes one, well, he must deal with it himself. But I always have, my policy throughout my speakership has been that if I know, when I get out to the chair, sometimes you know 2 minutes after you've said a thing that you've been wrong. But I never apologize the same day. I don't mind confessing. But on a few occasions, the next day, I come to the House and say, order, preface everything with order, which means listen to me. Order. Yesterday, I believe that I was wrong when I said so-and-so. The House is very kind. Yeah. They almost put their arms around you, as it were, because they like people to apologize. And it applies to them as well as to the Speaker. They like the Speaker to be wrong every now and again, but not too often.
Queen.
Your Grace, Prime Minister, the Lord Chancellor, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, this is a memorable night for Speaker's House. We are all of us met to pay tribute and honour to the Master of the Rolls, Lord Denning. I believe that this great office, rooted in antiquity, rich in history, has been served by great and outstanding servants in years past, but none more outstanding than our good friend Lord Denning. His life story reads just like an English fairy tale. Not very different from a Welsh fairy tale. only we don't have as many of them. Growing up in Whitchurch, that little community in lovely Hampshire, where my grandfather on my mother's side came from. I never lose a vote if I can help it. One of 6 children, 1 sister, 5 boys. 1 a Vice Admiral, 1 a Lieutenant General, 1 a Master of the Rolls, a Judge of the High Court for 38 years. What a record. And his ideals have been rooted in the Christian faith. But I want you to know your name is loved and honoured and respected by the ordinary people of this land. And at the end of the day, that's what counts. They are the people with an instinct and a feeling for people who love the country and who love what is honourable and true. And I invite you all to be upstanding and drink to the health of the Master of the Rolls and Lady Denning. Sergeant-at-Arms, have you anything to report?
Nothing to report today, sir.
Private business?
Yes. At midday, when Parliament is sitting, the Speaker has a regular meeting in his office with his deputies and officials. He discusses here the House of Commons business for the day, he looks out for any problems that may arise, and considers requests from MPs who want to speak in the later debates.
Malcolm Rifkin is making a statement on the United Nations Law of the Sea Convention.
Where will I put it? You haven't got the usual thing in here. No. Malcolm Rifkin.
Yes, sir. Of course...
The meeting is attended by the Clerk of the Commons. Sir Charles Gordon was Clerk for the past 4 years. He's the Speaker's principal advisor on parliamentary procedure. He sits at his desk in front of the Speaker with his 2 deputies beside him.
The office of clerk itself goes back a good deal further than even the archaic style of dress that I'm wearing at present. The first clerk, Robert de Melton, was appointed in 1363. He was, as the term implies, a clergyman, because in those days it was only clergymen who could read, and someone was needed to read the bills and generally look after the secretarial work of the House, such as it was then. When we sit at the table, one of our principal functions is to record all the decisions of the House. We don't, of course, record the speeches. That is what Hansard does. We record the results of the various motions, the results of the divisions, and the decisions which the House takes during the course of its daily business. And we record all that in a loose-leaf book, one of which I have here. Until about a dozen years ago, we hadn't advanced to the stage of loose leaf. We recorded our notes in an interleaved book here, which must have been very expensive to produce, and we find the loose leaf way of doing it very much more convenient.
Those daily decisions, recorded by the clerk, are sent to the printers every day after the House has risen. During the night, they're typeset and made up as proofs for the House of Commons Journal. The following morning, on the stroke of noon, the proofs are meticulously checked for mistakes by the clerk of the Journal, another old post that's been going for 250 years. This daily ritual is known as the 12 o'clock reading.
Okay, Paul.
Thursday, 2nd December 1982, Hampshire Bill 22.
Number 22. Yeah.
Hampshire Bill laws by order, second reading, first or Thursday, 9th December. Trade Adjust returns statistics relating to overseas trade of the United Kingdom for the year 1983 and for each month during 1983. Road traffic driving licences bill. The order for reading sometime on Friday, 21st January to the road traffic driving licences bill is read and discharged. Bill to be read sometime on Friday, 4th February.
What we have been doing is checking that the print, which was on our tables this morning, of the votes proceedings, is in fact accurate by checking it against the original sources, that's to say what the clerks wrote in their books, what clerks laying reports from the table put in the report book, and the list of papers which represents the papers sent in by government departments during the day. And we put in 1 or 2 corrections. There'll always be some printing or corrections of form or something. You wouldn't alter the substance in any way. This becomes the copy which we send to the printer for the Journal.
'20th century fact dressed up as 18th century fiction.
The Journal goes back till 1547, when a clerk called John Seymour had the idea of simply jotting down for his own information and convenience the bills that had been passed through the House. I do have here the very first manuscript journal in John Seymour's own hand. A surprisingly legible hand, really. The first edition on the first entry on Tuesday, the 8th of November, the bill for bringing up of poor men's children.
And that was the very first thing they discussed?
That was the very first entry that was ever made in the journals of the House of Commons.
Were these eventually printed?
Eventually they were, yes. Not until the middle of the 18th century. The journals only existed in manuscript before then. This large tome here is the first printed volume. I don't mean the first edition of them that was ever printed. Those are pearls beyond price. So here we have Tuesday, the 8th of November, the bill for bringing up of poor men's children.
Morning, Simon. How are you this morning? All right? Well, we'll have to get down to this business of the amendments now.
Clerks are the experts on House of Commons procedure. Sir Victor Goodhue sat as chairman of the British Shipbuilding Standing Committee. Advising him was his clerk, Simon Patrick.
There are 60 clerks in my department. That is, people like myself who have acquired an expertise in procedure and are capable of advising not only, of course, the chair in the House, but also the chairman of the numerous committees of the House. Every committee has to have a clerk, and there are various functions to do with the furthering of legislation, both public and private bills, and the processing of the journals, which have to be done outside the chamber and are done by my people.
We've seen many speakers in this House, but none has achieved the greatness in this assembly as you have, winning the confidence of all parties in the state for your impartiality, your control of the proceedings, even with your well-known order, with those good Welsh overtones. George, my dear friend, all of you, our dear friends, thank you all for the tribute you've played us this evening. Great gratitude, the proudest moment, if I may say, in my life, that you should all have gathered together with George to pay this tribute to us. Thank you very much.
This place is full of history, but we've tasted history again tonight. I think you know that I was a miner's son in Tonopandi. that I grew up in a mining community. All my friends, butties we called them, were in the mining industry. Very poor in this world's goods, but rich in love. However, I was nurtured with a respect for our country and a love for our country. And of course, the Speaker's office is central to our parliamentary democracy. So for me, all this pomp is part of the great office of state, and I'm all in favour of it. I think that if those who would destroy our pomp would take a great deal of colour away from our national life.
The Speaker is the one person in the House of Commons who is above politics. Once he assumes office, he loses all party allegiances. He must be, and must be seen to be, impartial. And he must have the innate ability, or he must learn the skill, to control an often excited and unruly House of Commons.
Everyone who walks through that door into this chamber is a strong character. Only strong characters are willing to fight a general election. It's a very rough game. They come here, they believe strongly in issues. And sometimes some are more excitable than others. We're all made differently. And I'm Welsh, who am I to talk? I have my own temperament. However, I've learned to discipline it, especially since I'm Speaker, of course. But there are times when a person can let emotions run out of control, and an appeal to their reason doesn't work. Well, in the last resort, the Speaker is able to tell a member he must leave the chamber. I realise they give me a lot of authority and power, but they expect me to use it sparingly and in the interests of the House. And I always feel a bit upset if I've had to name anyone. I've done it maybe 4 or 5 times in my 6 years, maybe a little more, but I think not. 4 or 5 times probably cover it. And I'm glad to say that when the member returns, there's never any personal rancour. They always know. They know really that there was no option. I had no recourse but to say, away with you. And they come back and life is back to normal.
Lancaster, I never like
Another one to join your little circle, the leader of the House of Commons, the Lord President of the Council, Privy Council, John Biffin, Penny Keith, and her husband Roddy, and the Archbishop. You are all Anglicans, I expect.
Yes, John.
Well, you are.
Yes.
Fervent sectarians like you always think the sort of genial or Anglican.
Actually, I'm hoping they're going to adopt us, but I'm a little bit nervous. But it's been a wonderful night.
Oh, very good. Excellent. It always is here.
Well, it's a happy place.
Yes.
I'm so pleased to come there.
Ah, yes. But, yeah, he did well indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a division in the Commons. I'm sorry.
God, it's not in the
It
Lord.
needn't worry you, but there is a division in the Commons.
Obviously, on this particular night, the Speaker was not presiding in the chamber. His place was being taken by one of his deputies.
Oh, yes, super. He really was. He's on one if the Prime Minister should cast a vote. Have you voted, Prime Minister? No.
You're in the right lobby there?
Yeah, yes.
Go your way.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you, George.
Thank you so much. No, of course not. George, you've been marvellous. I hope you remember that you enjoyed it. You made a marvellous speech, of course. I'm going to make sure they all know you're leaving to say good night. Would you all be kind enough to say good night to Lord and Lady Denning? There. Bye. God bless. One of my boys will see you out. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, bless you. God bless. Million thanks.
It's the home time.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you
Goodbye,
very
and
much.
have a marvellous tour in Australia. Thank you.
The Speaker of the House of Commons has an exacting job. It is his personality that must command the respect and obedience of the chamber. As one great holder of the office said, the office of Speaker does not demand rare qualities. It demands common qualities in rare degree.
I shall be grateful till the day I die that I had the privilege to be a Member of Parliament. I'm conscious always that Gladstone and Disraeli and Churchill and Attlee and Lloyd George, their first pride was to be a Member of Parliament. Secondly, to hold high office. And in my case, to think that both sides of the House have put their trust in me. To be fair and honourable in my dealings with both sides is something for which I thank God, and I hope that I shall never, ever let them down, because our democracy hangs on the Commons, and the Commons hangs on whether the Speaker does his duty.